I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone who teach and rule well, and Shalom to the sincere Akim, spreading the truth and sincerity. Shalom. So in this video, I want to make it part 2 concerning a gift destroyed the heart, which we can read about in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 7, which reads, "Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart." So, a couple of weeks ago, I made a video about how we in this truth are able to use this to our advantage without being malicious, with it, and I spoke about me basically saying thank you to two colleagues that work at my company that work in the warehouse part, that grab the materials and things for us, and up until then, or basically since then, I've basically, watched, certain things happening and unfolding and seeing the way, that they basically, treat me, and what I've noticed is that, the chocolate that I gave them, to basically thank them for basically, squeezing their eyes, and looking the other way, and giving me the materials that I need that have not been ordered, on that specific project, which I would have needed the planning or the planner to have ordered for me, to basically they give it to me, right? And what I've seen happening over the last couple of weeks is that, they um they have been very cool and down to earth with me, man. You know, um, to the point where yesterday I needed some things because I wanted to basically work as efficiently as possible. Um, and by working as efficiently as possible, I would have needed a light pole key. A key that is able to open up the hatchet from the light pole, so that my ground crew will be able to insert, the cables into the light poles for me to then later on basically fix up. You know, um, so I told them I would need that, one extra for my ground crew, so that they will be able to work, after I just, told them what to do, and then I would not have to open all the hatches, by myself, and then leave, which would then, save a little bit of time, and, that would be a little bit more efficient, right? So, long story short, yesterday he provided me with that key, which he was actually not supposed to hand over to me, but seeing, the connection that I've able to establish with him without being malicious, without, him, without, trying to manipulate him into, fixing up these things for me, by just, trying to be as sincere as possible considering the situation and what I need, um, it actually helped me out a lot, man. So we are able to use, these things to our benefits, because we know that we're not supposed to rest judgment by giving gifts, but through this we're also able to make friends of mammon, or make friends, in times which we need it, man. And I'm already thinking about, the fact how he helped me out this much, how I'm able to, basically, with a small gesture compensate him again, you know because that's the only thing that I'm able to do for him, for the things that he does, by making my job easier, without me stressing out, without me, getting agitated for things, not having been done properly, but I already see that I have to take, things more into my own measures, taking things into my own hand, and take more responsibility for things that are not supposed to be my responsibility, because there's like a, how you say that, I see a pattern unfolding, man. Because everyone that I speak, concerning my colleagues, they say the same thing. Yeah, we're supposed to be our own planners. We're supposed to be our own, executive. We're supposed to be our own things. And I'd be like, man, I'm doing jobs for multiple people then, if that would be the case, because in my mind, my work is supposed to be, prepared in such a way that I only have to put forth my work and not have to worry and think about other things. But I have to, do that basically. But now when that realization comes, I'll be like, okay, let me just do that. But don't expect me, to produce, a lot of result. You can expect certain quality, but then you're not, supposed to expect a lot of results. You see, seeing that I need to, manage and micromanage other things, right? So, to the best of my ability, artiza, I'm able to, get these things done, you know, with the situation that is presented to me, you know, and having the people of the warehouse, a little bit on my side, makes my job a lot easier because he said, you want me to basically book this on the same project that they ordered this stuff for you. I say, yeah, sure. And then I asked him, am I able to do it like this every time? He said, well, actually no, because when they book it in, they have a certain amount of money that they are then taking into consideration. But then at the end, when I book more things on that project, you're gonna see that it's gonna increase more, and they're gonna ask me questions. That's what he said. I say, yeah, I understand. But if things be like this, I just want to have, the how you say it, the the authority, by the peers, in the office to order things like this, if they have not been ordered properly, by the planning and things like that. So yeah, those are things that I have to, basically look into, and request, but basically it's a very good thing, man, to basically use a gift to not really destroy the mind in the sense of the colleagues, but to basically win them over and make friends of mammon, right? And we were able to use this to our advantage, but we should not be malicious with it, for a wrong intent, only for the benefit, of a positive outcome, and not for your own benefits, but for a positive outcome, so that you also, are being looked at as, someone that is doing the right things, you know. So don't be malicious with it, don't try to wrest judgment with it, but if you're able to do it, by making friends of mammon in this way, getting certain people, on your side when it concerns something that they're able to help you out with, especially when it concerns your job or something, go ahead, man. That's a very wise thing to do because it makes your job easier, and truth be told, that's actually the way they wanted to want you to do these things, you know. So yeah, there's not much that I can add, to this, but I do hope and pray that this video, was edifying, speaking on my experience, because it really helped me out, man. They man, they be putting certain things, in the plastic box, and they say, yeah, you can keep the box. I'd be like, whoa, okay. But I told them, well, I'm not able to use it, but thank you, so yeah, you know, getting these things to make your job easier when you're, you know, trying to do your best, but, you're being hindered by certain situations. You just gotta adapt, man, and it's not always easy, But the moment that you take these things into your own hands, that's the best thing to do, man. You know. So yeah, with that, I do hope and pray that this video was edifying. And with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, who teach and rule well, and Shalom to the sincere Akim, spreading this truth in sincerity. Shalom.